This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh, look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone. Good Sunday morning to everyone. This is the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sunday's the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well this morning. It's been a active and exciting weekend for me, getting all the responses to my latest true crime video, etc. And so I appreciate you all for that. And anybody else who might be new here because of that video or other videos, welcome. Hope you'll find this interesting. Well, let me get the hellos out of the way first before I dive into the whys and the wherefores of why I picked this video today to look at. First and foremost, Matt Barnes, ex-Bubba Hotep, Old Guy Gamer, Dark Remedy, Mike Savage, Swirl Blue, Funtime Bats, Bridget, Ebony Williams, Kiever Dam, we at Resolute Germ. My words are still waking up with me. Good morning to you all. Atheist Icon, hello. As preamble, Netflix. Several years ago, and you can find a link to this in the description below if I remember to do that, Netflix had a playlist on their own channel. They had a channel on YouTube. I think they still do have a channel on YouTube, but they had a series of videos they put out called Netflix Culture Myths. Very bizarre series of videos. I don't know how many of them still survive on their channel, but at the time, there were several on there with some interesting titles. And one of them was diversity and inclusion. And of course, at that time, as since, those two words are my favorites. So I was wondering what's going on here. I won't ruin it for those of you who haven't seen it yet. But the interesting thing is that shortly thereafter, like within a day or less of my posting the video on that video disappeared from the playlist. It was removed and privated. And so were several others on that playlist. Very bizarre because they were really slickly produced. You had these Netflix employees sitting in little round tables discussing various quote unquote Netflix culture myths. I suppose they had some need to try to dispel or talk about their company because there were rumors about what was going on. I don't know. I don't know what spurred it on, but there were things on there like pay and vacation time, all types of little things about the company, I suppose. But the one that attracted my attention first and foremost was the diversity and inclusion. And they had some very interesting things to say about diversity and inclusion. But again, I won't give it away because I don't want to ruin it for you, those who haven't seen the video. Anyway, you can find that linked in the description below. For those of you listening in the future, hey, watch that first before you watch this. For those of you watching now, well, just watch now. Because this video that I've found covers two topics, sort of, that I find interesting. First and foremost, Netflix culture, because the more I hear about the inside baseball of what goes on at that company, it's fascinating. But also ERGs. I haven't talked about employee resource groups in so long. I can't remember the last time I did a video on employee resource groups. What is an employee resource group, you might ask? Well, in their most benevolent intent, they are little groups within a company, usually peopled by and run by employees that help employees in certain situations with advice or resources and the like. And holy cats! What? Brett-eyed. Thank you so much. Whoa, dude. That is, I don't know what to say, except thank you very much. That is ridiculously generous of you. You are here, indeed. And forever will you be immortalized on this stream, so long as YouTube lets my channel exist. So, good morning to you. All the good mornings. At least 200 of them. Okay, well, give me a moment to recover from that. Thank you. especially at this time of year and everything else and the circumstances we've all been under for the last almost 2 years. That is exceedingly generous of you. I really do appreciate it. And as I am inclined to so often when I am blessed with such generosity, I will endeavor to pay it forward. So thank you so much, Brett. I really do appreciate that. Where was I? Yes, ERGs. Okay. Wow. So the most ideal situation for an ERG would be something like our company's Veterans Employee Resource Group or Single Parents Employee Resource Group, right? You have something inside the company that helps employees who are either in or a victim of certain circumstances, right? People that might need some extra help or guidance in something. So I've seen employee resource groups listed on many companies that have like a veterans group or a parents group or, disability group, something like that, where someone is either because of circumstance or because of their own merit are in a situation that sets them slightly apart from your regular employee. And maybe they need some extra help or they need some contacts or they need advice, that kind of thing. And that's perfectly fine. And if that's all it was, you probably wouldn't hear me on any of it. The problem is that so many companies have employee resource groups for the Black employee resource group, the Asian employee resource group, the LGBTQ plus employee resource group, the women's resource, and on and on and on. And in their efforts to seem and appear as all inclusive and supporting and etc. in their company, I think I've seen plenty of evidence to show that what you risk in doing this is tribalism and elevating or making special people on the basis of things that have nothing to do with their merit, but simply what they look like, or in the very bizarre situation where somehow you have to reveal your personal sexual preferences or something. It all goes into that bring your authentic self to work, bring your whole self to work philosophy, which I've talked about the death of professional distance and the risks that runs for companies. Especially when you start divvying your employees up on the basis of things that by civil rights law, you should really not do. Anyway, that's all the long preamble. What is Netflix doing with their employee resource groups? I don't know. We'll find out. Now, this is a 10-minute video. I can only assume that it is highly edited. It's nothing that I did. Each person is talking from some kind of Zoom call. So I tried to, modulate the sound and the audio, but, depending on the individual setup, your mileage may vary. So with all that being said, as preamble and otherwise, let's begin. A couple of seconds for sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear this. It starts very suddenly. So just a warning. Here we go.
Hi, Katie.
Everyone.
Oh, and it has subtitles. That's good too. You guys hear that all right? Let me know. Who else is here in the meantime? P-Dog Knight, Emperor W.R. Costin, Richard Thompson, Lissa Leo, Arc 210. Who else? Is that everybody I see? I think that's everybody I see. Brett, I've been... Hold on. Okay. Again, Brett, that is... Thank you so much. Now, Shio Gorath. Hello. Where'd it go on here? It was here a second ago. Now it's disappeared. There it is. I've been waiting to do that since like 9 LOL. Well, again, thank you, dude. That's ridiculously generous. Thank you. Yeah. So anyway, as I get my brain back to where no name. Good morning. All right. So hi, everyone.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Hi.
Tracy.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning to you.
Hi. Good morning.
Oh, and now Keeman pops in.
Keeman.
Good night, Keeman.
Netflix employee resource groups, a conversation. Oh boy, tell me about your employee resource groups.
All right. Well, thanks to everyone for joining me this morning, afternoon, evening. Why don't we start with the basics? And I would love to hear, Keeman, how would you define what an ERG is?
Oh boy. Okay. Definition of terms. All right. So like I said, my baseline is, it is a company's attempt And again, this is the company's perspective on it. A company's attempt to show support for their employees by showcasing the diversity and inclusion philosophy of their company, by having and recognizing the individual characteristics and what makes you you, and inviting you to bring your whole self, your authentic self to work, etc. That's my baseline of what the general sales pitch goes. We'll see. I haven't watched this, so I don't know what he's going to say next. But if it's anything like what I just said, I'm going to just laugh.
Sure. It's funny that you should always ask the lawyer about definitions.
Yeah. Why would you ask a lawyer about what? Ex Bubba Hotep. Holy cow. Thank you so much. I don't know if I'm going to get through this video. Well, since I don't know when I'll be able to catch you live, overnight life, an early Merry Christmas to you. Bubba, thank you. That oh my gosh. Thank you, Bubba. You wound my the poverty of my vocabulary in the face of such generosity. Thank you so much. Again, I promise that this will not go unpaid forward. Thank you. This time of year especially. Really appreciate it. I don't know what else to say, but thank you so much. I hope I've earned it. I'll just put it that way. Okay. Ask the lawyer about definitions. Well, it's interesting that the first person they call on when it comes to ERGs, they ask the lawyer. I find that telling.
Argue over that. So technically speaking, right, ERG stands for Employee Resource Group.
That's not technically, that is literally.
The way that I think about it is that an ERG is a gathering of people who share a common vision and a common goal.
Oh, so like affinity groups?
Right, usually oriented around or centered around a particular community or group.
No, not community or group. Depends on the ERG, but generally speaking, we're talking about, say it with me, demographics.
And really just seeking to be there as a source of support and encouragement for that particular group.
Yes, because depending on what demographic you fall in, you obviously need particular support because you belong to that demographic. And again, it comes down to what the ERG is about. If it's about veterans affairs, if it's about single parents, if it's about people with disabilities, or, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but if it comes down to because of what you look like, because of who you sleep with, because of your genitals, that's where you get into some dangerous territory, in my opinion.
When we think about what an ERG means to a company like Netflix, Pecoraro, maybe if you could explain what have been some of the conversations Black at Netflix has had.
So some of the
Black at Netflix. And that means what exactly?
conversation we had within Netflix were related to recruitment. For example, when I started.
Oh, her pronouns are she, her, hers. If you couldn't tell. Recruitment. Okay, so Black at Netflix and recruitment. So I'm backing up a little bit because I think I cut her off. Do tell me how race factors into your recruitment.
Conversation we had within Netflix were related to recruitment. For example, when I started 3 years ago in the company based in Amsterdam, we were only 4 Black employees. So we started conversation, I will say, with our HR team, so talent acquisition team, but also people and future people managers to really help them to diversify their pool of candidates.
Help them diversify their pool of candidates. And by diversify, you mean focus specifically on a particular race, since you're the one that brought up a particular race. Okay. And by what mechanism did they diversify their pool of candidates in Amsterdam?
We also had discussion around inclusion because it's one step to hire or to have a diverse pool of candidates. But if you put all those efforts and you don't build and develop inclusive environment, you're unlikely to see people staying.
Okay, define an inclusive environment. I'm more, first and foremost, just for legal reasons, I'm more curious about the whole diversifying your pool part. And then at what point in the hiring process is the racial test? You know, I've asked that question in various forms for years now when people talk about injecting diversity and inclusion, and they don't have enough of this demographic in their workforce, so we have to change that. We have to be better, etc. Okay, so when in the hiring process is the racial test, is the gender test, is the orientation test, whatever demographic you feel you don't have enough of in your bullpen, at what step in the process do you decide to hire someone on the basis of that desire? Thank you, Matt Barnes. I prefer Netflix of color. It's less offensive. Jesus. Oh boy, yeah, no kidding. Well, if you watch the sort of prequel video to this in the description at some point, it becomes even more blatant.
What do you think have been some of the key growth that you've seen or transformation within the group?
I know that Pride programming and LGBT related programming has become a big cornerstone of something that Netflix is very proud of as a company.
Uh-huh.
And the Pride group internally, I think, continues to help drive Netflix to remain inclusive. And
by what method? By what method does the Pride ERG drive Netflix to remain inclusive? I don't expect we'll get many details in this. Obviously, as in most instances, my questions are rhetorical, but the curiosity remains. Just like on Mars.
Internally, I think continues to help drive Netflix to remain inclusive in that respect and to continue to engage with LGBTQ audiences and to continue to bring that kind of content to the service.
Given the information relayed in the, again, I keep referring to the video that started all of this, but I have to wonder then, is Netflix hiring talent or greenlighting projects on the basis of the sexual orientation of the people involved? I have to ask that question. If you know anything about some of Netflix's initiatives in that regard, I have to ask, is there a orientation test in the people and or projects that Netflix decides to employ? And if so, well, that's a legal problem. So I keep, as people are talking, I can't help but, when they have the whole Brady Bunch set up here, I cannot help but look over to the lawyer to watch his reactions to certain things. Because he looks, I really am curious why they had to bring a lawyer in on this talk. That seems more like a red flag to me than anything else.
Even just recently, there's been a development in the media where a critic called out Netflix for having what the critic deemed to be unnecessary gay characters in all of its shows.
Well, okay. What was the context of that complaint? I haven't heard this complaint personally, but okay, what was the context of it? What was he citing? Right? And here's the thing. If you, as an ERG, are driving Netflix, or trying to influence Netflix towards this end, is it impossible that characters or character elements are being introduced artificially, as in they were not a part of the original script or pitch or anything else, but are being sort of executive produced into existence? Is that impossible? I guess that'd be my question.
And Netflix was really quick to respond and say that that's actually could not be further from the truth.
Well, here's the thing. It may be untrue. I don't know. But your own words have put doubt into the idea that every character we see show up that happens to conform to your demographic is there just organically. That's the thing. When you say that you are working to drive Netflix to being more inclusive for LGBTQ plus characters and elements, it's not impossible, is it?
And that every character we put on screen who's a part of the LGBTQ community is necessary.
Characters are not part of communities. They're fictional, but okay. Yeah, well, in what context was he talking about necessity? Or the critic, I say. I don't know. I do not know the critic's gender, but the critic in question, what were they referring to? Okay. Taking a moral stand on story elements is, I mean, it's an interesting take depending on the circumstances. But given the very purpose of your ERG, is there no grounds for this critic's complaint or, well, criticism?
When thinking about when ERGs first get started, Katie, how did the mental health group begin?
The mental health group? I'm honestly trying to think if I've ever heard of a mental health ERG in any of the previous examples I've looked at. I mean, it's not impossible, obviously, but I don't recall a mental health group. Okay, please do tell me that the mental health group at Netflix is run by psychological professionals or trained professionals in mental health and not just people with mental health issues.
Americans report that 1 in 4 adults a year deal with a diagnosable mental illness.
Yeah, diagnosable mental illness. Yep, there are a lot of mental illnesses that are diagnosed. Whether they are justified or not is also another question, but either way.
And that's only Americans, because globally numbers can be very skewed due to underrepresentation, global stigmas, lack of education, and just knowing that I personally am on a team of 20 people. So if 1 in 4 Americans deal with this, that means 5 out of the 20 people I'm sitting with in this conference room are probably dealing with similar issues.
Okay, well, first and foremost, if there's one thing I've learned dealing with what could be classified as a mental illness, anxiety disorder of some kind or another over the course of my life, and then talking to other people who also suffer from mental or emotional illnesses of one form or another, is that I may be able to sympathize to a degree, but everybody's different. You know, my anxiety is not necessarily someone else's anxiety, and how I deal with it might not be a way that works for anybody else on the planet. But again, aside from that, what exactly does the mental health ERG do, is my question, 1. And 2, are the people running it trained professionals?
So I really just wanted to start the conversation so that we could be open with one another and really just start to build a community about that, because I noticed the second I started being vulnerable to people around me, I got so many responses from different people, from directors to individuals that said, you know, I go to therapy once a week. I deal with these issues. It's so great to hear somebody talk about that.
Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to be a complete, cynic here about the whole thing. There can be something helpful and comforting with being able to have someone to talk to about issues like that and everything else. That's great. I don't have a problem with that. I'm just curious, like I say, what is the function of the mental health group in Netflix? I mean, if they're just a bunch of employees who got together to have that available to people who might be having that issue, and then they have Netflix to help them refer people to professionals and mental health assistance and things, that's fine too. Because here's the thing. I kind of see the idea of ERGs sort of like those administrative assistance groups you'd see in colleges. Like when I went to college, there was the well, the one that I was most directly involved with was the sexual health department or something like that. It was essentially a student / slightly administrative run office out of the campus health department, and it was there for you go there and get safe sex advice or condoms, or be referred to Planned Parenthood or something. And in regards to at least me, it was the fact that since the BDSM club dealt with sexual health or sexual lifestyles and things, that we had some contacts there. So there can be, plenty of reasonable, beneficial elements to having sort of assistance subgroups within your organization, depending. So again, I'm not downplaying the whole idea of ERGs. I just wonder about the legality, reasonableness of some of the ways that employees are broken down into demographics, and what that does to not only employee morale, but also what risks it runs as far as either elevating or seemingly giving special treatment or consideration to people on the basis of things that have nothing to do with their merit, nothing to do with their performance as an employee, and so on.
So it really just encouraged that vulnerability so that we can just build a stronger community and rally around each other rather than fear talking about it.
As long as people are coming to it voluntarily, as long as you're not, prying into people's lives as a matter of course. If you're just saying, hey, if you happen to be dealing with some kind of issues, there are people you can talk to, and leave it at that. And that's fine. That's fine. As long as all that it is, okay, I guess. But I'd like to hear more about what they do as a resource group, aside from just having people to talk to, which is helpful, but not necessarily the most beneficial thing you could do.
Lydia, I wanted to ask you, in terms of DreamAt, what prompted you to found that group?
Dream? Okay. I can guess where what this might be.
I was really inspired by the pride and the commitment around the ERG program.
Uh-huh.
And when you think about immigrants...
Are you going to distinguish between legal and illegal immigrants? Because when you bring up dream... Okay, and I've said this before, but just as preamble, I do not have anything against or problem with the idea of the DREAM Act, or inherently the elements of DACA. I have a big problem with the way in which DACA was implemented through presidential fiat. It should be something that goes to Congress and gets a vote. And if the elements of DACA and the DREAM Act as proposed, last I checked, remain the same, I have no problem with that. Children who are brought into this country by their parents or whomever against their will, without their knowledge, without their consent, because they're below the age of consent, should not be punished for their parents' actions. Their parents should still be held to account for their actions, but the children should at least be given the opportunity that would have been denied them by their parents' decisions. I do not have a problem with that, first and foremost. But at the same time, I also sort of, in my mind, demand that we be honest about what we are talking about when we are talking about immigration, and not just lump it all into immigrants are treated like blah. No, it's, are you here legally or are you here illegally? Did you come across the border and sneak across? Did you overstay your visa? Or did you come here through a legal means? Either through an asylum, you became a resident, you became a citizen. I hope she differentiates, because simply not being from this country is not the end of the story.
There isn't a lot of public open pride around being an immigrant.
Are you nuts? Are you nuts? Now, again, maybe I'm just a little bit too bald eagle apple pie here, but I actually do have a certain amount of pride in the fact that our nation is made up of people that came here from all over the world, that we are an amalgam, that we are a conglomerate, that we are a mishmash of cultures and foods and styles and language and music, the whole 9 yards. I know. I'm too idealistic. I'm too idealistic. I do not believe, as some of the press would make you think, that the majority of Americans are a bunch of hateful xenophobes. I think the majority of Americans are just standing by following the laws more than anything else. And that's being re-wrangled into being xenophobic. You know, it's interesting, and this is just a recent example. I know I'm dating the stream here, but about a year ago, thereabouts, when the president started putting travel restrictions on countries because of the pandemic, he was called a xenophobe and hateful, etc. Within the last 4 or 5 days, the current president has done the same thing. And nary a word has been heard in negative response to that by the same press that categorized it elsewise previously. And in this instance, I actually agree with the press's silence on that because I don't think it's a xenophobic act. I don't think this country is inherently xenophobic. I think this country is inherently a country of laws, of the Constitution. People ask, what is American culture? American culture is based primarily around what is in our Constitution. That has set American culture. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion. These are the things that are the foundation of American culture. So the idea that there's not a public, open pride around being an immigrant, it depends. Did you follow the rules in coming here?
And we actually err on the side of being private. It isn't always the safest for us to disclose our immigration status.
Why would that be, might I wonder?
And it's kind of a stressful topic overall.
So are you saying that Netflix employs illegal immigrants? Knowingly? What exactly does your ERG do? What assistance does your ERG provide such immigrants within Netflix? I'd be curious to know. Also, here's some company loyalty over here with her drinking out of her giant Netflix mug. And here's our lawyer. Look at this guy. This guy, man, if looks could kill, holy cats. And maybe that's just an artifact of being a lawyer, but man.
We live in a lot of uncertainty.
Why?
So I wanted to bring an element of immigration pride.
Pride over what action? Being here legally or coming here illegally? Pride. I always get wary about the word pride being attached to demographic. Because oftentimes, unless you're talking about something that is an element of merit or of sacrifice or of service or something, like veteran pride, that makes a lot of sense to me, could be. But female pride, male pride, like you didn't do anything. Pride over what? It doesn't say anything. You didn't. It's not an accomplishment, right?
A sense of community to Netflix. And I also wanted to bring awareness to how immigrants can function in the workplace.
How immigrants can function in the workplace. As though they're a different species or they're just people. I mean, aside from whatever Damocles sword that they've created over their heads or not, depending on how they came to the country, what are you talking? I know I'm not going to get any specificity. I know, but I can't help but ask. Thank you, Point Curation. Good morning, Sunday morning. Yes, indeed. Good morning, Sunday morning, as Saint Pelosi once bestowed us with. Oh, such memes. Such memes. Thank you, Point. If you got your Etsy, I always forget to have it with me. If you got your Etsy store link, put it in the chat and I'll post it. Guys, check out Point Curation's original art he has for sale at ridiculously low prices, usually with a coupon for viewers of our channels. Anyway, so how immigrants can work in the workplace.
How they're affected in the workplace.
In what way? What do you mean? What are you talking about?
and work with the inclusion and diversity team, work with our allies to build immigrant pride.
First,
what? Okay, I know I'm a broken record. I'm a broken record because I don't know what any of that means. How does that function within the company? What services, resources do you provide to and I'm going to put quotes around it because an immigrant? Okay, by implication, you are talking about people who are in the country illegally. Okay, don't want to disclose their immigration status, right? The only people who would not want to disclose their immigration status, if it came up in some way, shape, or form, is if they're not supposed to be here, right? Or if for whatever reason they have either overstayed their visa or whatever. Okay, that is the only reason someone would be hesitant to disclose their immigration status should it come up. So, what resources is Netflix tacitly providing illegal immigrants in their employ? That is not an unreasonable question based on what you've just given us. And I am massively curious to know, even though I know I'll never find out.
Somos, how do you decide where you want to put your efforts and what conversations you want to pursue?
So our ERG Somos, so it's for any employee at Netflix who identifies as Hispanic or Latinx.
I'd be curious to know how many employees identify as Latinx. That word and the effort behind it to normalize it is so ridiculous. But anyway.
And of course, allies, we encourage allies.
Allies. Okay, so that's anybody who isn't Hispanic, right? Anybody who wants to help you or to join your group because I don't know, they like Hispanics, or maybe they just like you as a person or something. Yes, allies. That's the other sort of pitfall of ERGs. You have the in-group, you have the out-group. You create these tribal system of everybody being divvied up by demographics, and then you have people who can't belong but can serve each individual tribe should they choose to do so. And they have their own classification. Allies.
When we first started, it was a very, very small group. I was actually part of Pride, and I saw the large community that exists with Pride, and we didn't have it yet with the Somos ERG. And so we were like, we got to listen to what the members want. We can't talk at them. We have to talk with them. And so we've collected a lot of feedback over time, and we realize feedback is important even within an ERG. And so once you realize what the members want, that's how you're able to continue to grow membership.
It's an engagement. If you're working on the things that matter.
We can't talk.
Like what? Like what are you working on? I mean, again, it could be something completely benign. I don't know. But if you don't say, I can't tell. So as a promotional video for Netflix's culture and everything, this has been, and I guess I shouldn't be surprised, thin on details, big on abstracts. So.
And we didn't have it yet with the Somos ERG. And so we were like, we got to listen to what the members want. We can't talk at them. We have to talk with them.
Yes. Yeah. So you wanted to form an ERG based on an ethnicity, but you had no plan for what you would do. You just wanted to have a classification because you could have a classification. Okay. What is your mission statement then? I guess maybe that's what I need to know. What is the mission statement of each of these ERGs within Netflix?
And so we've collected a lot of feedback over time, and we realize feedback is important even within an ERG. And so once you realize what the members want, that's how you're able to continue to grow membership.
Is that the goal, to grow membership? Just be bigger, become larger? I mean, maybe that is, I don't know. But what exactly do you do? If I come to Netflix and I'm an employee and I'm Hispanic, what do you offer me that you either will not or cannot offer a Black employee? Right? I guess that'd be another one of my many likely to be unanswered questions.
It's an engagement. If you're working on the things that matter, then people are going to be more intentional with the time that they share.
Moderator lady, if you already know what all this is about, what are we here for? Who is this presentation for? Right? We talked about this in the last TEDx, just because the speaker brought it up. You have to figure out who your audience is. Right? You have to craft your message to the audience. Who is this video for? Now, just as a point of reference, this video was posted about a year ago, I think, like June 2020. So this didn't happen last week or something, but I think it's likely still relevant. I'm so curious, like, okay, you put this video up on YouTube. Is it there to inform other Netflix employees? Is it there to inform the public? Like, who are you educating with this?
When we think about in terms of the ERGs, how would you define an ally?
How would I define an ally? A subservient individual who doesn't belong because they don't fall into this demographic that I belong to. That's basically it. Someone who is helping us, but they don't belong and can't belong. That's it. A lackey. I think that'd be a good word to replace it with, lackey. When someone says, "Are you an ally?" they're asking, "Are you a lackey?" More or less.
And how does participation from an ally look like?
Yes. What can an ally do for the non-defined Somos ERG?
For us, allies are incredibly important.
Yeah. Every time they say ally, just think lackey.
Because we try to do a lot of educating, and we try to look for people who are allies who we can inform and empower to take what we teach them about our community and to put it into practice in their own lives.
If they're an ally, then presumably they are not themselves LGBTQ+, etc. Practice it in their own lives. Like, what does that mean? If I'm not mistaken, okay, it is a list of either sexual preferences or gender status when you're talking about transgenderism, which, and this is the thing, being transgender does not define your sexual orientation. And I've never quite understood why it's included in all that, but either way, what are you teaching that someone's going to practice in their own lives when the entirety of your ERG is based around who you like to sleep with? More or less. What does that mean? Could you tell me what that means? Thank you, Kiefer Dam. Allies plus ERGs equal allergies. Good one. Good one. Maybe. I don't know. Because obviously, if you're an ally, you're not part of the group. So you have to be kept away from being part of the group. So maybe there is some kind of general allergic reaction. Okay, what are you asking your allies to put into practice in their own lives? Like, are you a employee resource group, or are you a group of evangelists for some belief system? Like, you want to turn your allies into, like, what, missionaries? There's a joke in there, but I won't go for it. I'm higher class than that.
And in their own offices and on their own team.
Like what? What practices do you and your ERG members possess or take part in yourselves that are going to benefit everybody else? What specifically?
Where there may not be a member of the trans star group.
The trans star group? Who can do it for what? What are you talking about? And I know I come across this, but in this instance, I'm not trying to be, not being condescending. I'm honestly bewildered. What are you talking about?
We teach them about our community and to put it into practice in their own life.
Okay. Are you talking about like transgender acceptance, that kind of thing? Like, I'm assuming you're talking about like reducing stigma or increasing tolerance, that kind of thing. Is that what you mean? I'm asking sincerely. I honestly don't know. Thank you, Chicago Mike. Allies equal Igor. Yeah, to a great extent, that is how it comes across. I cannot say that is what every person who employs that word means, but ultimately, when you're saying this group of people are special and have their own group because of element X, and anybody on the outside is an ally because they need help, and anybody who doesn't belong is just a helper, it does feel more than a little condescending in and of itself. But okay, is that what you mean? You're trying to, increase acceptance. Is that it? If that's it, okay, by itself, I don't disagree with the sentiment. I guess it just depends on how you're doing it or how you're telling people to do it.
And in their own offices and on their own teams where there may not be a member of the TransStar group.
Okay, I thought you're part of the Pride ERG, which implies a multifaceted group of people. TransStar, I've never heard of that and hasn't been mentioned, so I don't know. Is that a separate group?
Who can do it for ourselves. And there's a culture around allyship where you're sort of expected to listen first and speak second.
Yes, that is how I've been educated to look at it as, right? How many times have I been told that certain people need to give up the microphone or step aside or step back and let marginalized voices, etc. So yes, that is what I've been told as anybody who does not belong to the group that needs special help. Yes.
They can ask us really thoughtful questions, and then they can put what we're asking people to do in the community into action outside of the meetings. It's been incredibly beneficial.
Well, yeah, if you have a group of people who are going to go out and do your bidding because you tell them to, and because whatever sense of either imposed guilt or self-imposed guilt they feel over being what they are versus being what you are, I'm sure it'll be beneficial for you because you have people doing things for you because you've classified yourselves as needing help simply because of, well, who you sleep with or how you see yourself. So of course it's beneficial. Why wouldn't it be?
And I don't think without allies, we would be able to do any of the things that we've done.
Maybe that's true. I don't know what you've done, so I can't estimate that. But at the same time, why couldn't you have done things on your own? Maybe you can't. I don't know because I don't know what you're talking about. So, but again, allies, lackeys, helpers.
In thinking about this time that we're going through during time of COVID, I'm curious if there are unique conversations that have happened within your ERGs.
Okay.
I think it's been a very unique time for a lot of people.
You think it's been a unique time for a lot of people? Yeah, once in 100 years, pandemic, panic, fear across the world. You think it's been a unique time? Well, gosh, British form of understatement right there.
Than your ERGs.
I think it's been a very unique time for a lot of people.
Also, what ERG does the lawyer belong to? Did I miss that part? Or is he part of the legal department ERG, overseeing any public speech given out by employees onto a public platform?
Right, because when you are a parent or caregiver, you develop a rhythm in most circumstances of separating the two worlds. And so I think it wasn't until schools closed that it really began to have an impact on us. I think the way...
Why did the schools closing have an impact on you? I mean, if you're a parent, sure. Obviously, kids have to be stayed at home and things. Is that what you mean?
That having an ERG has helped is really giving people in that position a forum, right, to talk about the things they're going through.
I mean, as far as having a support system, sure, but then ERGs still split people up along demographic lines. It's not like, or it shouldn't be, that we're just still divvying people up, right? Everybody's going through this.
And another thing that's been great is really just being able to surface the conversation and the stress around having to try and do it all, right? And I think the way that we've been able to respond as an ERG and have that dialogue with company leadership is just saying, hey, look, this is a hard thing for people to go through.
Really? Really? Now, I mean, there are a lot of things I could assume about super duper at the height of the chain corporate types and whether or not they actually are human beings. But I don't imagine that even the stingiest CEO could not have recognized in the course of the pandemic that things are tough to go through for people in this situation. I think even then, maybe, I suppose it's not impossible that people at that height are more detached from the pitfalls of going through this as a grunt in the trenches than someone who's at the top of the ivory tower, but all the same.
Can we more deliberately and intentionally message to people that they have the space?
What does that mean? I should just have like a soundboard and just save myself the words. What does that mean? What are you talking about? Give me an example. It should become my mantra. What does that mean? What are you talking about? Give me an example. There's your ringtone for the day.
Right, that they don't need to perform at 100% while also trying to keep their kids, up to date with all of the homework and lessons and everything else.
Okay, that's reasonable. That's entirely reasonable. You have to adjust your expectations and the workload based on the circumstances that is unavoidable for the person going through it. Like if you were on medical leave for something, or you're coming back to work after major surgery and so on. But in this instance, yes. A lot of companies have had, and again, this video was made a year ago, so they're talking a bit when it was just sort of hitting everybody. Yes. Okay. Reasonable enough. What does any of that have to do with ERGs? What? That's a human experience. Anybody with kids or a child dependent, that's just, what does ERGs have to do with that?
That's right. Or just keep them alive and clothed and well fed.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that leadership's been really, really receptive to.
When it comes to new employees joining Netflix, how do they find out about the ERGs?
Yes. What do you do to a new employee coming in to let them know that if they should choose to do so, they can go categorize themselves or debase themselves to some group or another based on something that has mostly, oftentimes, nothing to do with who they are, but simply what they are? Do tell.
We've actually worked with the HR team on how to incorporate different elements that we advocate for as a group into the actual onboarding itself. So
what? Okay. All right. Insert my mantra here.
Not just talking about ERGs, but also one of our TransStar programs is the Pronouns Initiative.
The Pronouns Initiative. Well, I mean, I have noticed that every time they've introduced somebody, they've had to include their pronouns off to the side. Okay, so is Netflix regulating speech? I can probably assume so on the basis of what the... Okay, I have to assume our speaker in the corner is part of two different groups, or TransStar is a subgroup of the Pride ERG or something. They haven't specified that.
And getting people to add their pronouns to their name and signature block.
Is that a company requirement? Is it a company mandate that I put my pronouns on my name and signature block? If I'm honestly curious. Is that something that Netflix requires of their employees?
Add them to your employee page on our internal white pages directory.
This is something that you need to have happen for everybody else. You need everybody else to do this. And you got HR to either encourage and or require people to do this. Is that my understanding?
And we actually developed helped them with a memo about why this is important, and then put that out to the HR team.
No, why it's important to you. You need to have this happen. It's not important to everybody else. It's important to you.
So hopefully when people are attending a new employee orientation and they hear the HR team talking about, we encourage people to do this.
Oh, encourage people to. Okay, so your first, and again, I based on the editing, I can't know for sure, but this is the way they presented it. So Netflix's first example of how people are introduced to ERGs at their company is to be told an ERG says this needs to happen, so you really should think about doing this. So ERGs are dictating company policy and procedure to new employees. Is that how I'm to understand someone's first introduction to ERGs at Netflix works? Because I would believe it.
To add pronouns, we start the conversation right there.
No. That is not a conversation. That is an edict. It may be a gentle edict, but it's an edict. That's not a conversation. Okay, let's be honest about what we're talking about. Someone comes into the company and HR tells them, encourages them to do this because behind the scenes, you want it to happen to make you feel better about something. That is not a conversation.
That yes, there are people here that care about this kind of thing.
And if I don't care, that's their problem, isn't it? Right? Some people care about kitty cats. And some people are allergic to death of the things. These two types of people can work together under the same roof because a care for kitty cats, unless you're working at a vet's office or something, is irrelevant to your ability to work together or do a job. So just because you care, does that mean I have to care?
And to make people who may be part of the trans star community or who are allies feel comfortable being open and visible about that.
I don't feel the need to be, quote unquote, open and visible about my pronouns. If you want to, by all means, I wouldn't stand in your way. If I was working at a company and somebody wanted to put that in their signature block, I'd think it was kind of goofy, but I wouldn't care. It wouldn't be something to wouldn't get my hackles up. I wouldn't start some kind of problem because of it. But that's your problem, not mine. If you don't see pronouns in my signature, on my emails, on my employee page, you're going to throw a hissy fit? Again, that sounds like a you problem. Why is it my problem?
From the very first day.
And
so that is, so of everything that could have been discussed on this Zoom call, that is the one example Netflix wanted us to hear about how employees are introduced to ERGs. That is the one and premier example. Okay, I kind of have to look at this video now, well, the entire time. It's kind of a meta thing. This is the messaging Netflix wants us to hear. Doesn't matter what the individual said during the course of this probably long call, but during this 10-minute edited video, this is what Netflix wants us to know about how their company works. Got it.
One word, what does being part of an ERG mean to you?
Oh, one word. Do you think they'll be able to hold themselves to one word? I'd be surprised. Let's see. There was something I saw earlier on the chat that I'm now... There we go. Jim Healis, comic book creator, independent comic book creator. Scribe, my company put me in the veterans ERG without even asking me. Oh, so they, saw your service somewhere on your resume or your record or something and just signed you up. Now, see, maybe I need to, after I'm done with this, Jim, I got a couple of questions for you. I'll ask, and maybe you can put them in the chat if you're still here by then. I don't know. I'd be curious to know, of all the ERGs I ever hear about in companies, one of the very few that sound conceivably reasonable as a function within a company is a veterans ERG. So I'd be curious to know if, even though you were signed up without your consent, does the veterans ERG actually, provide some kind of actual benefit, or is it just window dressing? And of course, each company is different, and you don't have to name your company or anything. But I'd just be curious to know in your case what your experience has been.
Community.
Community. No. Segregation. Segregation. Demographic segregation. It's not about community. It's about dividing. It's not about making people feel welcome. It's about making people feel categorized. As our speaker just showed us by trying to guilt trip every incoming employee by making them feel better about themselves. Come on. But you're the lawyer. Of course you'd say community.
Vulnerability.
Vulnerability. Okay.
Rewarding.
Rewarding. Well, if you're being given jobs or giving jobs to people on the basis of things that have nothing to do with merit, that can be very rewarding.
Like being a part of a movement.
Part of a movement. Yes, because within our company, we have to be activists and encourage activism. What movement is taking place with helping out illegal immigrants? What movement is taking place within your ERG? What is the mission statement, given what you've implied? I would love to know.
Solidarity.
Solidarity. Yes. Not conformity per our wants and likes, but solidarity. Yes.
Being a part of an ERG, I would say in one word.
You already failed. Everybody else, except for actually being part of a movement, isn't actually one word either. So we already had one failure, but you're doing even a worse job.
Is validation.
Validation. Now that's a good one. That's a good one. I think that probably that probably best represents a lot of these things. Validated, but on what basis? Again, go over the names of the ERGs. Now, the mental health one, of the examples we've been given, the mental health one is the one that I'm most leaning towards. That could actually be, depending on how they manage it, okay. But I don't know. I mean, just of everything here, that is an ERG that offers ostensibly support for people who are going through a difficulty. That at least lends itself to being reasonable or beneficial. Again, depending on how they manage it. Everything else here, illegal immigrants, I'm Hispanic, I'm Black, I'm LGBT, whatever, everything, and trans star, and I don't remember what the lawyer was part of. Everything else has nothing to do with... Anyway, have I been repeating myself? I have been.
Oh, thank you so much for joining in the conversation today.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad to take part in this conversation, which wasn't a conversation. It was just being lectured to.
I feel like I just continue to learn more.
Really? Learn more? Because it seemed like you already knew everything before anybody finished speaking. But what do I know?
About the amazing impact of all these different groups.
So far, the only impact I've heard is that new employees are being nudge, nudge, wink, wink, encouraged to conform to the wants and needs of a very small percentage of the employee workforce. That is all I've heard so far. I didn't, or with the lady from Amsterdam talking about how increasing the diversity pool or something. So dictating to new employees how they must express themselves and implicitly putting in a racial test into the hiring practice. That's what I've heard so far.
And so thank you for your time.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Tracy.
you.
Thank you.
Good talking with everyone.
Thank you.
It's good to see everyone.
We are Netflix. Yeah, but I mean, you're not really, because you're Black Netflix and you're Somos Netflix and your Transtar Netflix and your Pride Netflix and your Dreamer Netflix, et cetera, et cetera. You know, everybody's got to fall into a category, and every category has to be catered to because someone else might feel offended, etc. So there you go, I guess. Jim Heelis says regarding veterans ERG at his company, window dressing, and I get a special email from the CEO on Veterans Day. Okay, so now in my hope of hopes, and obviously in your case it's not so, but in my hope of hopes, veterans ERGs and other places actually do say, hey, are you a veteran and you need some help navigating through the health insurance policies of the company for veterans, that kind of thing. Or maybe you need some referrals to therapy, physical therapy. I mean, anything the VA itself is failing in, which the horror stories I've heard therein could be obviously so. But I mean, if there's something that the company's actually doing to benefit veterans who specifically need specific, help, that's great. In your case, I'm sorry that it doesn't do more. I'm also sorry that you were signed up without your consent. Just like, oh, you're a veteran, you're part of the group now. I'd be curious to know how many other companies do that on a reflexive basis with their employees based on something that they just know that the person is. Like, you're a woman, you're part of the women's ERG. Can that be considered discrimination in the workplace after a fashion? I don't know. And also, it also make the one ERG that always kind of baffles me to a certain extent. I mean, most of them do, and the Dreamers one here really does. But like, who I prefer to sleep with? Why is my sex life the company's business? Or why should it be? Why would the company want to encourage that in the first place? In fact, why would the company want to encourage divvying up the employees on the basis of demographics at all? What a fine wire must be walked in a company operating, or at least headquartered in the United States of all places, to do that. And especially the implication by the lady from Amsterdam that they're using a racial test in deciding who they're going to recruit. I really am curious why there was a lawyer there for this talk. Well, maybe I'm not all that curious, but all the same, it was an interesting red flag. Okay, I'll give a couple minutes here for anybody who wants to say something or add something, and then I will wrap things up, scrolling up a little bit. Let's see. I see a whole bunch of conversations going on amongst yourselves. I enjoy the fact that you've all created a community to validate one another in solidarity. Joshua Wetzel, I'm 14 minutes behind, and without even hearing him speak, I knew who the Munchkin comment was about. He must be on call to get his people to help him rebuild the Lollipop Guild. I mean, the reason you saw the pronouns on everybody's little intro text there, I have to assume, is because of his ERG. I mean, he basically just told us that is why that is there. Not because anybody wants it to be or feels the need to, but because wink, wink, nudge, nudge, be an ally. You're quote unquote encouraged to do this. Let's see, absolutely degenerate. Remember when race, sex, and who you slept with was inappropriate to talk about at work? Yeah, or make a subject of categorization at work, right? As though it should mean something. Like what? Why? I guess this is the overall question. Short of someone being in a situation or the victim of some, or maybe not the victim, but someone who finds himself in a circumstance of hardship, let's say, right? So you're like a single parent, or you're a recently returned veteran, or whatever. Even the mental health ERG. Okay, short of that, what automatically makes people think, you are demographic X, you need help, right? You need special assistance. Somehow, the thing about you that falls into this demographic is a functional, talk about contradiction in terms, a functional disability that you need help for. I guess that's sort of the primary thing that always sort of like catches my brain when I hear about an ERG that has anything to do with something other than a circumstance. you know, or a status of merit or service or something. Like these people need special help because they are what they are. Do they always? What? Let's see. Dovefruit Zero needs to represent lawyers. Yeah, I maybe it was mentioned at the very beginning, but if he was actually part of an ERG, I forget what he said he was an ERG of, but other than the legal department. ARC210, Scribelite ERG. Yeah, yeah, it would have one member all by myself, like taking care of myself. Independent streak. Yes, the Scribelite Employee Resource Group. Actually, there would be, I take it back. I would not be the only member of the Scribelite ERG, right? Wowie, wow, wow. Yeah, there's only one member of the Scribelite ERG. Actually, I think, no, actually, I take it back. You're an ally, aren't you? Wowie, wow. Wow. Yeah, Dog Cat Fox is not part of the Scribelite ERG. You're not allowed. Don't give me that look. You're not allowed. That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Learn your place, Dog Cat Fox. Jeez. Such an attitude on that guy. Okay. Absolutely degenerate again. I've got to be honest. I needed help in school with an IEP, and I'm college with disability services, but these are the only real areas I can see where people would need special help, that and poverty. Yeah, again, hardship, right? A circumstance of difficulty that can be applied to, well, you know, just about anybody, right? Disability, mental health, poverty, a learning disability, you know, something like that. You know, where someone comes in and, you know, just luck of the draw, lightning from life. This is the situation I'm in, and I function in some way, shape, or form differently than others, and it just requires a little extra assistance. Those are the kind of ERGs that, you know, at least abstractly make sense to me. Beyond that, well, first and foremost, they should be voluntary. It should not be just assumed that you need to be part of this thing, that you can't take care of yourself. It should be something that, sure, be informed that's there, but participation should be entirely voluntary, first and foremost. But outside of that, outside of circumstances like that, I just find a lot of these ERGs questionable. Standard Athlete Scribe, please stop arguing with your imaginary friend. Imaginary? But do imaginary friends sound like this?
Wowee! Wow! Wow!
I mean, seriously, could you actually believe that an unreal person would sound like that? Moving on. Let's see. Asia Research Directorate. I was strongly tempted to enter my apprenticeship as a woman to get more grants, but it's too important to me to fuck around with. Yeah, there are so many like scholarships or considerations in companies and schools and everything that are so dying to want to increase their numbers, right? Their quotas and so on. And yeah, it can be tempting. And honestly, you know, in some instances, I wouldn't necessarily blame anybody if they were going to take advantage of that, you know, work the system. If the system says, I'm going to get an advantage because I checked this box, why wouldn't I do that? And it really is up to the person. I don't really have I mean, I guess it depends on the situation itself. I mean, but ultimately, if you're going to get an easier time of it by checking a box rather than not, but then it all comes down to, you know, your personal integrity, what you want to be recognized for, you know, earning something on your merits and not, et cetera. Like I say, everybody's different. Every situation's different. If some company is going to be so, you know, wackadoo as to do something like that, and you think it's going to give you a leg up and you've been, you know, put down in other situations, I wouldn't blame most people for doing that. Personally, you know, I don't fall into any category that I know of that would give me such an advantage in such a way, except for obviously my white privilege, which gives me a passive advantage every time that I walk out the door. I wouldn't do it. Let's see. Dylan Farnham, every time I get a new job, I put myself as trans. Like I say, You know, if only in satire, sometimes it makes sense. Bridget, Scribe, this video is just a way for them to show that they are loyal. There is no target audience. That could be it too. It could be just them, you know, smelling their own farts or something, you know, or just reminding themselves about how progressive or virtuous they are. I don't know. But all the same, it's out. This isn't an internal company video. This is out on a public, you know, YouTube channel for public consumption. So I have to ask myself, like, is this an advertisement? I mean, ultimately, they probably are advertising to potential employees because they want people to know this is how they operate. You know, for whatever exceptions or challenges I might have to what they've said, this is how they run their company. This is how they want people to know they run their company. So presumably the kind of attitudes and the kind of, perspectives that they had presented here are exemplative of what they want in their company. So in that sense, you know, maybe it is an advertisement and an honest one. Hard to say. And let's see. Dylan Farnham again. My dad's white from South America, so I check the Latino box. Boy, do they look surprised when they see me. That's something that a lot of people, a lot of people have come across seemingly don't understand. Being Hispanic / Latino, there's no one look. It runs the gamut. In that sense, it's really all about sort of area and or country of origin. It's not about race or skin color specifically. Yeah, that's something that a lot of people seemingly don't understand a lot of times, or are surprised by, as you say. You know, it's like, I'm Latino. Really? How? Right? This is like, huh? Anyway, let's see. If these people took in CO2 as much as they did their own farts, they wouldn't complain about global warming. All right. Let's see. Anybody else here that I haven't already? I think. Oh, yeah. ARC-210. It's all eyewash from a company's perspective. Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing, too. For as questionable a practice as a lot of what was implied here, either, you know, lightly or heavily, the thing that, and it's not just Netflix, but companies in general, I've mentioned this before, the lack of consequence, right? If a company representative, any company representative these days, stands on a stage and talks about how they have a goal of getting to X percentage of fill in the blank with demographic by name a year. And obviously the only way to do that would be to start filtering your hiring and or promotion practices on the basis of fill in the blank with demographic, which is a blatant violation of federal law. If there were any consequences to that, you wouldn't see that happening, but there aren't, seemingly. I mean, for as many corporate diversity and inclusion videos as I've done, for every individual company that has come out and made this declaration, there should be at least one lawsuit per company, you would think, for making a public statement of being in favor of and crafting policies to violate the law and other people's civil rights. If those things are happening, they must be happening outside the realm of the media, or being settled separately, or being privately arbitrated or something, because it just seems like such a... There was a video I did a couple of months back about a law firm and one of their corporate videos, and the things they were saying, there was no couched language, there was no filtering, it was very obvious. And I thought to myself, if the lawyers aren't even scared, right? If even the lawyers are not scared of telling the world that they're going to hire on the basis of quotas and race and gender and orientation, what hope do the rest of us have, right? But all that being said, everyone, I'm going to call it here. Thank you guys so much for coming and joining me for this. If you're curious as to what spurred me towards this video in the first place, a link is in the description to the prequel video to all this. Please forgive the weird green border that showed up on that one. It was a weird technical time. There's a note on the video about that. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everybody who donated, I still don't know what to say beyond thank you. Thank you very much. You guys are ridiculously generous, both to myself and so many of the others in our little Lords of the Night circle, so to speak. I will be paying it forward quite soon, and I will post something to Twitter to that effect shortly. Yeah, I don't know what else to say beyond that. Anyway, quick preview. Thanks to, and let me name drop here because a name drop is deserved. Let me, okay, Alan Hardy, or Elaine Hardy. Allen. If I got it wrong, I apologize. Elaine Allen cued me in to an interesting event that has occurred in Canada, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken. And that is where a government official, let me make sure is it Canada? Yes, Canada. A government official has lost her job because she, after research, completely lied about her racial and cultural origins. And fortunately for us, a couple of years ago, she did a TEDx talk about her racial and cultural origins. And as far as I can tell, TEDx and TED have scrubbed it from existence since this revelation came to light. But that didn't stop me. So next Thursday, short of something else more miraculous happening, we'll be taking a look at both the news story that prompted this little examination to occur, as well as the TEDx itself. In retrospect, a comedy show. Next Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for the next episode of TED Excellence. Hope to see you there. Until then, everyone, I hope you all have a great rest of your Sunday, a great rest of your weekend. I hope you are all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.